Hi, everyone. My name is Hannah Smolinski, and I am a CPA and the founder of Clara CFO Group. We are a fractional CFO agency, and we've actually been using Jirav to serve all of our clients since 2022. So that is why I am your instructor today, because I have been using the tool very heavily since 2022, and it has transformed the way that we serve clients. So I am very excited to get into showcasing today the Controller Essentials platform. Today's video is going to be about how to do trended planning and reporting in Jirav, and we're going to look at budget versus actual and AI forecasts. So we're going to spend most of our time today in a screen share where I'm going to be walking you through the Controller Essentials platform, and let's go ahead and get right into it. Okay, so here we are in the Controller Essentials platform. And what I wanted to start with is to show you that when you open up Jirav, Controller Essentials is going to be one of the first products that you're probably going to use with clients if you've never used Jirav before. And so this is going to be like a demo of how to get up and running with some of the forecast tools that we have so that you can really start forecasting within minutes of starting a new client on Jirav. So I wanted to show you to start out with a financial overview. This is an out-of-the-box dashboard, so I have made no customizations to this whatsoever. This is what you get when you get a Controller Essentials package. So it's going to give you some KPIs up here and some metrics that you can show your client right away: cash on hand, cash versus prior year, revenue versus cash. All of this is completely customizable, but this has been kind of set up for you so you can kind of see what a potential dashboard could look like and some things that might be helpful for your clients. So this is the financial overview. This is going to be mostly focused on historical information. And so they actually also have in here a forecasted outlook. I'm going to switch to that one here by looking at selecting this little caret and then going to the forecasted outlook. And what you'll see here is that the date ranges have changed. And so now this is pulling the ability to see into the future with this revenue and cash on hand metric. But you'll see there's actually no data in here because guess what? We don't have a forecast into this system yet. So what I'm going to do is actually show you guys how we can get forecasted information and future looking information into the Controller Essentials package here. So there are two ways to get future forward-looking information into your Jirav Controller Essentials product. So the first way is that there's an auto forecast feature, and this literally magically happens in less than a second. Jirav will actually forecast the financials for you. So I'm going to show you that in just a minute. And then the second way is that you can import a budget. So if you've been working with a client and maybe they have a budget they've been working with already and they don't want, you to create a new one right away, they just want to use what they already have, then you can upload that directly into Jirav. Or maybe you've been working with a client and you were creating a budget for them and you had it in Excel or Google Sheets or something like that. If that's the case, you can upload that into Jirav and have it here so that you can actually run reports against actuals versus budget and show dashboards based on that information as well. So I think we'll go ahead first and show you how to get started with the auto forecasting feature. So let's go over there. So whenever you're trying to modify any of the forward-looking information, you're going to go to Plan. So you'll click on that up here in the top middle part of the screen. And then on the left-hand side, it'll show which plan you're in. So right now I'm in the auto forecast plan. I could rename this if I wanted to, but it's set up here to be called auto forecast. So if you look over here, I'm going to minimize this so we can take a look. This is all of the past information that has been connected from QuickBooks Online. You can see that. You can scroll all the way over. All the information has been pulled in from January 2024. And we have information all the way through March 2025. So that is the historical information. And now let's talk about auto forecasting, because right now you can see we don't have any information up here after April 2025. And you can sort through over here on the left-hand side. We're looking at revenue right now. They have a COGS section, which you can see revenue and then modify COGS. And then you have operating expenses or OPEX over here as well. So none of that has been forecasted. So let's get a forecast in. So if you want to get a forecast done, you're going to go over to the right hand of the screen over here, right side of the screen, and you're going to click this auto forecast. It's got the little stars and the arrow. So you're going to click on that, and then you will just toggle this little switch over to the green and the check mark, and you will have enabled your auto forecast. So let's click save and see what happens. Ta-da! This is the auto forecast feature. So now we have numbers populated all the way through December 2026. And this is going to be based on a trended forecast. So Jirav has figured out, they've done a lot of analysis to decide, based on historicals, what is the best prediction of the future. And they're using that algorithm to be able to come up with these numbers. Now, you will see that it's not just revenue that's been forecast. You can see that COGS has also been forecasted, as well as operating expenses. So I can literally see all the way through to December 2026, a prediction, an auto forecast of what my operating income will be at the end of 2026. How cool is that? Okay. So that just took seconds to get that in here. And I wanted to show you guys as well that the auto forecast feature is still editable. So if you saw something in here and you were pretty happy with it, but let's say that you were talking with your client and you found out that they are doing a speaking engagement, for example, in May, and they're going to get paid in June for that. You can go in here and you can still type in, they're going to get paid $25,000 to do that work. You can still go in here and add additional service items or service revenue to explain, any additional anomalies. So you can save that and it will increase the amount from there. So just because the system auto forecasted for us doesn't mean we don't have the flexibility of going in and modifying here or there. So let's say, for example, that the auto forecast has December being very high at $500,000, but what you know about the client this year is that this year they're choosing to take 2 weeks, the last 2 weeks of the year off, where they had never done that before, and this is kind of a new thing. And if that's the case, they might not be able to earn as much revenue during that time. So you might actually go in here and modify the services based on what you think that prediction of the decreased amount might be. So you can see there that I modified it down by 200,000 and it took down the revenue for December. So you can go through and use the auto forecast to kind of get you started, but you can actually look through every single month and say, hey, does this make sense? Does this not make sense? And do I want to modify it up or down? So I really like that about the auto forecasting feature because it allows for more flexibility when you're actually talking to your client. I want to show you guys that you also have the flexibility of adjusting how the auto forecast is calculated. So let's look at that. If you go up here to the right-hand side to the gear icon and then go under model to forecast and click there, and then click over here to auto forecast. This is saying that right now the forecasting is a linear trend with seasonality for all accounts. But if you wanted to customize, you could actually customize line by line. So let's say with service revenue, maybe instead of linear trend with seasonality, you'd rather just make it a simple average. Then they would actually do that and change the way that they've factored in the seasonality and just take the amount that they believe is going to happen over the year and just put it as a flat line forecast. So, or you can do this to everything. Let's say you just wanted to make everything a simple average overall. Wouldn't recommend it, but it's, it's nice that you have the ability to sort of go through account by account and change things if you would like to, especially for operating expenses. Maybe last year had some anomalies because bills weren't being paid on time. Let's say that's, just an example. And so there was kind of a lumpy amount in the history. But going forward, you've got all of that fixed. You have everything on auto pay and you don't expect to have the same lumpy expenses. Then you might want to move to an average, a simple average and flat line rather than using that seasonality. Okay, because the system will take the history and try to make a prediction off of the history. So if the history looked lumpy and big ups and downs, then it's going to project that into the future. So I like the fact that you can actually go back and, specifically enable or disable some of these things. Okay. I'm going to take us back to the linear trend with seasonality though, and just keep that. And then take us back there. and we will save that. And so I want to show you, now that we have the auto forecast plan, I want to show you what the dashboard will look like. So now we have a forecasted dashboard, and now I can actually see this trending line of what my cash is going to look like. If we achieve these metrics, we hit our revenue targets, and we are, keeping in line with our operating expenses, we are looking like cash is going to be increasing significantly throughout the year. So that's a really great insight to have, and a really great thing to be able to show a client, to say, like, when we are doing planning and we're doing good planning for you, look what the type of information that we can have. We can, show you what your cash is going to look like at the end of the year. I don't know about you guys, but like, clients just don't even, they're always worried about the cash that's in their bank accounts. They're oftentimes not even thinking that it's possible to know what cash could look like at the end of the year. So showing them a graph like this is extremely powerful for them to be able to actually visualize and get excited about achieving their own goals and achieving their own revenue targets. So these insights can be really powerful for clients. They get really excited when they see this. So yeah, I'm just kind of showing through here. We can look at operating expenses. This is another one to go through with clients, where you can say, like, hey, we're seeing an increase over time. Maybe in February and March, we had lower operating expenses, but then we started hiring additional people. And then maybe we started, increased our rent to a larger facility or something like that. And you can see the effects of these things as time goes on. So I think that this is also a really helpful thing to go through with clients, so they can see visually what's happening over time. So that is the auto forecasting feature. That is one way to get future looking information into the system. And now I'm going to show you how to get a budget into the system. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to go back to plan, and then I'm going to show you the budget. You don't want to upload the budget and override your auto forecast. We have a separate plan for that. So we have our 2025 budget here, and it doesn't have any information. You can see that here. It's actually has not had actuals pulled through March 2025 like the other one did. We just pulled actuals through December 2024. And you can actually modify those date ranges when you go up here to manage plans. You can modify your date ranges here under the actuals period. So that's really helpful. So let's get some information into this. Let's go ahead and upload a budget. So what we're going to do is go over to the gear icon up in the right-hand corner, and then we're going to go to integrations under your company. And then we're going to scroll down and find the budget section. And so this is where you can upload a budget import, and you can actually download a template for this. So you click on this template, just scroll over it until it becomes a little hand, click, and then you want to download a template for the budget, and then download this, and it will show up in your downloads tray as a Excel file. And so then you can open that and you can modify it from there. Now, I already have a budget filled out, and so I'm going to show you what that looks like first. Okay, so here's an example of what the file looks like. So it will give you columns A through D, and then the forecasted period over here, but you will need to input the dollar amounts into the spreadsheets based on what the account name is. So, use some Excel tricks to get this information in here if you've filled it out in a different way, but you put your numbers in there, and this is what we will now upload into Jirav. Now, there's also a forecasted balance sheet. You don't have to do this part, just focus on the income statement. All right, so I'm going to import this file by clicking on import, and then I'm going to put it to the 2025 budget. So I'm selecting the plan that it will be uploaded to. I'm going to go find my file, and all rows were recognized and imported. So let's go back and check that out. So now I am in the budget plan, and here we are with numbers populated into the budget, which is fantastic. So all the way through December 2026, because that's what was in my file, okay? And I have numbers here. I'm just checking through. I have numbers in COGS, and I have numbers in operating expenses. So I should have everything I need to have a net income, and I do. Okay, so same thing. now that we have this forward-looking budget in here, we can also create a dashboard specifically for that. Now, these first two dashboards, the financial overview and the forecasted outlook, these two are canned and pre-populated into your Controller Essentials package. But this existing budget one was created for this video. So you can manage budgets and you can actually go in here and clone a dashboard at any point in time. So the existing budget is basically a clone of the forecasted outlook. So I'm going to show you that. It's cloned and then modified. So we had cash on hand and revenue versus cash. We had revenue in here. So it's slightly different view, but it was cloned and then it was modified. So this is really helpful to go through with clients as well. Here's a couple different views. For example, now we have like a budget versus actual here under operating expenses. So we have our budgeted amount and then we have our actual spend. So we're not going to go through how to build these dashboards in this video, but this is a great deliverable that you can give a client so that they can look and check over, what the budget that they gave to you, or maybe the budget that you worked on together, like what does it actually look like for the year? Okay. So now what you might want to do, we just imported the budget and then we had the auto forecast. So you might want to do some things where you're actually comparing the two to say which one is better. So let's say a client came to you with a budget and then you looked at it and you're like, hey, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Maybe you talked about the logic with them and it didn't really seem like they were putting a lot of thought into it. So you wanted to compare that to Jirav's auto forecast to see like which one you want to use as the plan going forward. So if that's the case, I'm going to show you guys how to do that and do a quick review of the two plans against each other in the report section. So let's go to reports here in the middle. And then up again, navigating through Jirav's like pretty consistent, go up to the left-hand corner and click on the caret, and we're going to scroll to the forecast report package. And so this is Panda Corporation. This is a reporting package that we can export and share at any point in time. We can modify, we can add additional reports in here. This is just the cover page. We're starting with the index page, which adjusts as you add different sections. There's a commentary page. So if you want to make notes, I love to make notes when we are in a budgeting phase with a client. We have a budget notes page here because the client will be telling us something that they want to do in the next year, or they will be telling us like changes that they want to make, and we want to keep track of that. And then inevitably their minds will change or something will change, and we can kind of go back and say like, well, why did we have that number? Like, what was that based on? And the budget notes can be really helpful for that. So let's go to the forecasted dashboard. So you can always put dashboards here in your report. But what I want to show you here is if you were actually talking through this with a client, you might want to, and let's just say you were trying to say, hey, the budget that you brought to us is showing X and the auto forecast is showing Y, and you're trying to decide which is that right plan moving forward. So you can go through and actually create an executive summary of both and do a little side-by-side comparison, which I have down here. So first, I just want to show you what an executive summary will look like. This is where we have some charts to show, your revenue COGS. And then when you scroll over these, they'll be highlighted. But it also has the green line that's always showing cash, which is a very helpful view. And then the executive summary will show what is actual through the period that's under review. And then it'll show forecast for everything in the future based on the plan. So this one, I've labeled this forecasted because this is coming from that auto forecast. And I can show you, if you go to edit columns over here on the right, it's asking where the source is, and it's coming from the auto forecast source. Now, if I changed it and took it pulling from the budget, it would obviously change the report, but I have a separate report to show that. So this is showing a projected cash balance. That's the thing about the executive summary. It doesn't just show the P&L. It also shows, some of these metrics up at the top, which are all customizable. The cash balance, change in cash, AR, AP balance, all of this is customizable. But this will give you a sense of, okay, with the auto forecast, based on like actuals for 3 months, forecast for 9 months, We are on target for 5.5 million. And then the profit is at 20.5% at 1.128 million net profit. So let's compare that and just check and see. Let's say you were talking this through with a client. So now let's go and look at the budget. And so this is the executive summary for the budget for 2025. So you'll see in this one, we do not have an actuals period. This is just looking at the total budget for the year because that is the source that we are doing, that we are pulling for this report. If you go over here, you can see that the source is the 2025 budget. So looking at the budget, our revenue is 5.7 was the plan. And then our plan for profit was actually higher. So revenue and profit were higher than the auto forecast. So right now it's looking like the auto forecast is being a little more conservative than what the budget had planned. So, we're also looking at, well, did we even hit, the first marks in the first, 3 months? So that's a question for a little bit of a different time. But if I was going through this with a client, I would be trying to validate their budget to kind of get a sense of if they created the budget, was it actually based on real numbers? Did they do their due diligence to actually go in and, support the numbers that they put in their budget? Or were they just picking numbers out of the sky and it was very aggressive and maybe like they weren't really thinking through. They were just like, oh, we should make revenue $6 million and we should blah, 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 without really thinking about how they were going to achieve it. So oftentimes clients don't necessarily put in as much time and attention into creating budgets with actual support but that's why they need us. They need us to help them with that sometimes. So, you can validate a budget here and this can be really helpful. So let's do a comparison. I'm going to just move my way through this forecast report here. I have a comparison where we can look at the budget versus the forecast. And we have a nice little comparison chart here. You can do comparisons in Jirav by going back to this edit columns section, and you can compare, like I have the source budget versus the auto forecast. Very easy to adjust that. So if I was going through this with a client, I would be looking through and, I might look at it. I would definitely look at it before I had a conversation with a client. And just going through and starting to validate their numbers, like what is the percentage of COGS to revenue that they used versus what the auto forecast came up with? What is the direct cost of inventory? What is their average payroll looking like? Is the auto forecast is looking a little higher? Does the client actually plan to let some people go? That would indicate that the payroll should be lower than what the auto forecast is. So, really think about that. We have a really big discrepancy here between the auto forecast in marketing expenses and then what they plan to spend in 2025. So this means that in the past, they really haven't spent much money on marketing expenses at all. And so the forecast would adjust to that. And then they're saying, no, they're going to spend $153,000. So that is a big red flag for me. That would be an indicator of hey, we need to talk about this. And, you can actually put notes over here, what is the planned spend here? Because maybe you haven't gotten to that point with the client yet where maybe you've just started working with them, you're setting up your Jirav account for the first time, and they haven't told you what this big marketing spend is yet. So yeah, you can just go line by line and kind of look to say what's reasonable, what's not reasonable. And then ultimately you can decide on a plan that you want to have moving forward. So you can keep both plans in here and you can always run a report against the forecast or run it against the budget. So moving down here into our next report is the income statement of the forecast versus last year. So this is a really helpful thing to look at if you are just trying to make sure that your forecast is looking reasonable to what you have spent in the past. Our past spending is going to be an indication of future spending. And that is partly with the auto forecast that Jirav has done and created. They are looking at past spending to predict future spending, but it is weighted more heavily on the more recent months. So you might look at something and say hey, I don't understand maybe why product revenue, for example, is so high compared to last year. It's almost 2 times, but it might be a bit more based on product revenue might have had a ramp up in the more recent months. So it was going off of that growth rate or whatever that might be. So you can use this report to help validate the numbers and just look to say, like, are they reasonable? Are they not reasonable? Do we need to go into the plan and make a modification if we want to use this auto forecasting feature? Like maybe the auto forecast looks great, except for like one little anomaly we'd like to go in there and modify for, like the speaking engagement example that I had before. Or maybe you know that like, hey, we're not going to use that consultant anymore in marketing, and it's going to take our marketing expenses down significantly. Or maybe we've said, hey, no travel in 2025 because we're trying to save money. And last year we had a lot of travel for conferences and whatnot. So there can be a lot of like, things that the auto forecast is not going to know and that you can know as the service provider because you're having conversations with your client. Okay. So same thing, you can validate the budget that the client had to your actuals here from last year. I think this can be really helpful. Okay, moving down here on the left, we're going to go to this budget versus actual tab. So what I have here is I have our actuals versus our auto forecast, actuals versus the budget, and then the auto forecast versus the budget, which we've kind of already looked at for the time period of the beginning of the year through the latest closed month, which in this case is April 2025. So what we want to see is we want to see how is our forecast doing? How is our budget doing? How much are we off? So in this case, it looks like we're lower in our actual revenue or lower in our cash balance. So let's look at service revenue. So service revenue is below our auto forecast by 67,000. And then service revenue is below, our actuals are below our budget by about 122,000. So it looks, again, kind of to a point that we made earlier, the budget is a little more aggressive than the auto forecast in this case. So right now we're missing the targets on the budget pretty significantly all around. And then you can go through and actually look here. So I feel like these budget versus actual reports are one of the things that help clients stay on track more than almost any other reports we can show them. Because at the beginning of the year, clients will make plans, but things change during the year. And sometimes they'll decide to go in completely different directions than they were going to go at the beginning of the year. So these reports can show indicators of like operational changes, and they can raise flags of, hey, this might be something we need to talk about. And so it's totally fine if you get off of the budget in one area or another, but ultimately, keeping it in balance and helping the client navigate if they're spending way more in a certain category, how can you advise them to, potentially cut in another category? Or maybe they're making more revenue, so then it helps cover some of the additional expenses. So you can have really value-added conversations around a budget versus actual. And that's one thing I really love about like being able to get this budget in so quickly with a quick upload, or having an auto forecast where you can actually get that information into the system so you can actually do these comparisons. All of this can be really great conversations to have with your clients. Moving down here, you can also see a forecasted balance sheet. Again, this is another one of those things that clients are like, whoa, I'm going to be able to get a sense of what my bank account will look like at the end of the year. But you can see, this has been set to the end of 2025. So we can see our total assets and basically what our forecasted balance sheet will look like, which can be very helpful. And then we've also got the ability to create a cash flow statement, forecast it, as well as other dashboards. So all of these reports in the forecast report package are going to be able to help facilitate you to have a value-added conversation with your client about the rest of the year or the next 2 years. And so oftentimes they're going to want to look over these things after you've presented them to them. So they're going to want to look over these reports. So the great thing about Jirav is you can always share these reports. You can publish it to finalize it once you're totally done with it. And then the published reports would show up here and under published, which locks in all of the numbers. And then you can always share by going to share and export. You can share it and literally type in what email address you want to send it to, and that person can have access to the reports, and you can have it just be view only. So if you don't want your client going in there and tinkering with your Jirav account, which I promise you don't, you can have a view only, or you can have you can have different levels there. But You can also, if you prefer to export as a PDF, you can do that, or Excel, or even Google Sheets. So you can export the reports so you can make sure they can get delivered to your client. So one more thing I wanted to point out for you before we close out this video is that up here in the top left-hand corner, you are able to upload a logo so that when you're presenting this to a client, it does have that kind of professional white labeled look of, having your logo up in the corner. So that's pretty nice. And then you can upload that directly in the partner portal. So not in the individual client account, you do that through your partner portal. Okay, so now we know how to get trended planning into our Jirav Controller Essentials account, and also how to do reporting and update dashboards for it. So I hope that has been very helpful to you guys, and I'll see you in the next video.